children. It's so good to be back with you and able to tell you stories from the Bible. I love stories. I wonder if you like stories. When Jesus was a little boy, there were no storybooks for children. Most ordinary people couldn't read, so storytelling was very important. Jewish mums and dads would tell the children the stories passed down by their grandfathers since God first made the world. Jesus told lots of stories to anyone who would listen. He used his stories to teach people important things. Sometimes he was even called the teacher. He became famous for his storytelling, and people used to flock to hear him. It worried Jesus that people might go away without really understanding what he was telling them. So he usually took the trouble to explain the meaning of the stories. So, as we open the book at A Tale of Two Houses, see if you can work out what Jesus is saying here.
Two men decided to build a house, one each. They looked round God's beautiful land to find the best spot. The houses needed to be near water and fertile ground so that the men and their families could grow crops and vegetables and graze their cattle and sheep. Both men thought it would also be good to have a really beautiful view so that when the day's work was done they could sit outside relaxing with their wives and enjoy all that God had provided for them. These men, let's call this one in the stripy clothes Farid, and let's call this one Simeon. Each set off to find the right spot to build his house. Farid quickly found what he was looking for, a good view near the water, and he collected his tools and set to work. Simeon poked and prodded and hummed and hawed, but he too found a place he thought was just perfect for a house. So they set to work. Farid worked quickly and had the walls up, almost before Simeon had made his first clay brick. All Simeon had done was to dig a big, shallow pit.
Get a wiggle on, mate! At this rate, you'll never be able to get your roof on by autumn.
Simeon said nothing. He stared at Farid's house and went back to work on his pit. And as he worked, he prayed.
Help me to do this right, Lord. You know the best way to build a house and the best way to live a life. I will trust in you always.
Get a wiggle on, mate! My roof's nearly finished, and your wall isn't even a metre high. You'll never be ready by the time the cold comes.
Simeon said nothing. He stared at Farid's house and went back to work on his wall. As he worked, he prayed.
Help me to do this right, Lord. You know the best way to build a house and the best way to live a life. I will trust in you always.
Get a wiggle on, mate. No time for roofing now. My house is finished. My wife and I will be moving in tomorrow. Snug as a bug in a rug. I don't think you're ever going to be finished before winter.
Simeon said nothing. he stared at Farid's house and went back to work on his roof. And as he worked, he prayed.
Help me to do this right, Lord. You know the best way to build a house. And you know the best way to live a life. I will trust in you always.
Simeon finished his house just before the winter storm started. Torrential rains began and the winds blew, and soon the river rose. On and on it went for days and days. Simeon was glad he'd taken such care with the foundations of his house. He'd made sure he'd found a flat piece of land with a good rocky base. He'd made his clay bricks and built slowly and carefully, making sure that everything was watertight. He trusted in God to show him the best way both to build his house and to live his life. Simeon peered out of his small window just in time to see Farid's house give its first wobble. The ground was built on what seemed to be disappearing into the river. He stared at Farid's house as it swayed and lurched and fell to pieces with a loud crash. And that all that was left of it was a heap of mush on the sliding sand near the riverbank. Sensible Simon was like the people who listened to God and built their lives on what he told them. Foolish Farid was like those who didn't.
So, did you manage to work out the meaning of the story? Sensible Simeon was like a person who listens to the wise words of Jesus and trusts them. That person builds a good, strong life for themselves, just like the good, strong house. Let's close our eyes. If building a good life means listening to wise words, whose words are we going to listen to? And whose words will we ignore? I'm going to say a prayer. And if you'd like to make it your prayer, you can say Amen at the end. Dear God, help us to listen to those who have wise words to share, and help us to ignore silly ideas. Amen.